Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I hope people can see the screen well and they can hear me all right. In case you are facing any difficulty, just pop in a question to the question section and we'll figure out what needs to be fixed. So I can see there are a good number of people already there and it's about time. So keeping everybody's time, precious time in the middle of afternoon in India in mind, we'll get started off and quick few things before we go ahead. So this is Nitin here. I'm going to be your host for next 60 minutes or so. Okay, so I'm getting some feedback on the questions window. Audio is breaking. Let me try things. Hopefully it will make it look better, make it sound better. Okay, and yeah, so coming back to it, few quick things. Before we get really started off, we are going to have a huge group of about 100 odd people, and so what would be important is for us to keep to time. So here is how the agenda is laid out for next 60 minutes. There is a slide deck that I'm going to walk you through, and we'll probably take about 35 to 40 minutes to cover that. And then we'll keep time towards the end for any question answers, any discussions. The way for you to reach out and send in any questions would be through the questions window. So please bear that in mind. And apart from that, this session is going to get recorded. So what we'll do is subsequently we'll send out a note to all the participants with a link to where they can access this recording from. So don't have to rush into taking any notes. We'll be sending out the recording. So that's what would help you potentially refresh your memory beyond this webinar as well. So with that said, let me get started off. And we'll like I said go through the deck, and what I would request is as the sequence of the deck unfolds itself, uh, I'm hoping that a lot of your questions will get answered along the way, but if not, I would really request to hold off on submitting your questions till the end, and then we can go through those questions at one shot, which would probably be best for all the folks involved. So with that said, I hope we are all set, and let me get started off. So here is what we are going to be doing over the next 1 hour. We are going to talk about what is PGMP all about. I'm sure many of you have already some bit of orientation, some bit of knowledge, and I'm hoping that this webinar would help you get more clarity. There might have been questions in your mind which you can seek answers for, or otherwise, if you have not been initiated at all, it will at one shot give you a bootstrap, give you a boost, and hopefully keep you excited and motivated enough to go forward with your PGMP preparation. Personally speaking, I am a big fan of the fact that this PGMP certification, it is not just a concept to be applied for taking certification. You can actually go ahead and start using it in a daily life as well. So there are a lot of things here which would be applicable, relevant for your day-to-day work life as well. So feel free to take up and take on any learning benefits, experience that I share today, and go back and look to apply it in your day-to-day life. So coming back to it, specifically agenda that we are going to cover today. So we'll briefly touch upon what is PGMP all about, and we'll go through it little more detail about what are the benefits of doing PGMP certification, and what is the process which you need to go through. So there is a fairly elaborate and lengthy process which one has to go through to get PGMP certified. And of course, we will spend fair bit of time on covering what program management framework is all about in PMI, as per PMI in PGMP context. So we look at the overview. We'll talk about what is a program and what is a program management role. And then we'll also briefly look at what is the overlap between program and benefits life cycle. We'll round it off by offering you a typical preparation plan that I personally have followed, have recommended to a lot of people, and they have benefited from it. And last but not the least, we'll round it off with a couple of with a few practice questions as well as one potential scenario that you can go back and look at working offline as well. So with that said, let me get going forward. So coming back to what is PGMP all about, essentially a lot of you, I'm hoping, are already exposed to the certifications offered by Project Management Institute USA. So this is a very elevated, very reputable certification, and this is considered to be the next level, next step up from typically what you would see happen in a PMP certification. This is aimed at people who are managing beyond a project, who are managing more than a project, and the definition of project here is generic, irrespective of industry you might be working in. And it gives a framework, it gives concepts, it gives understanding about what kind of principles, approach, philosophy, and methodology can apply for managing complex programs. And then, like I said, it also talks about the distinction between various aspects. Specifically, we'll touch upon what is the difference between a project and a program. So, if nothing else, for the purpose of today, honestly, if all of you go back with a clarity in your mind on what to qualify as a project and what to qualify as a program, I think we would have started off on a great base. Moving on, here is what a PGMP certification can bring along. At this point, there are globally only about 1400 plus PGMP certified professionals. In fact, last count that I was checking off a couple of days back was probably around 1430 or so. So you are going to be an elite company if you do manage to join the club. Specifically, PGMP is, like I mentioned earlier as well, is a highly respected certification, very specifically in North America market, where people look up to PGMP as a professional elevation, as a mark of professional experience, as well as your credibility in the industry. So this is more about what a certification can bring as a tag value. More realistically, more practically, it does give you exposure to all the program management techniques which are typically not available for you to look at or go through in your normal day-to-day routine life. So you could very well be doing a lot of program management in your day-to-day life, but you might not be doing it with the full understanding of science and the method which could go behind it, or you could not be thinking of it as a program while you may be going through it by your own commonsensical approach. So it does enhance your capability and ability to manage programs in real life, and that is a bigger and a far better benefit than just being able to get yourself certified, in my personal opinion. Moving on, so what is the process? And like I said, be very, very attentive to this piece. A lot of this information, or in fact, most of this information is already available on the PMI site as well. Nothing here that you need to jot down or take furious notes on. But it is good to get through this alongside, so that there is a clarity on what it takes to go through the process. So in terms of official formal process, there are essentially two steps. One is a application submission, which goes through a panel evaluation with a group of program managers globally who would look at your application, assess based on the responses on of your application, assessed whether you seem to have adequate experience, qualification, and understanding of program management sphere. And once they accept the application is when you go through the next step, which is the final step and certification. However, of late, there have been a lot of cases where this panel, while evaluating application, would also choose to perform an audit of your responses. What it means is essentially the application would ask you to submit your experiences of various programs that you would have been exposed to in your past life. And what panel would look for is in case it doesn't sound convincing enough, doesn't sound comfortable, or for that matter doesn't sound complete by itself, they may reach out to you and ask you to submit the supporting evidence based on the responses and experiences that you have listed out in your application. And that itself takes its own life cycle. To the best of my knowledge, rejections, if handled, if application and audit is handled appropriately, rejections have been very few, but there have been some where they have chosen to come back and say that it doesn't look like your experience is strong enough to be able to go through PGMP process right away. Okay, quick introduction, folks. I'm getting one note. It seems like voice is not carrying through to all. I do not know if it is a one-off case or is it something which is affecting everybody. So far, folks, okay, good to hear that at least some are going through it all right. So what I would suggest is, see, from our perspective, we have taken all cautions that we needed to take. Pretty much everybody else is on mute. So for folks who might be facing difficulty in hearing the audio, my request and submission, if you can check up on your own net connectivity. In case need be, you can try to log out and come back again. And last but not the least, please do remember, in case you are not, you are running into difficulty with respect to your net connectivity, there would be a recording available subsequently for offline reference as well. So let me get back to the deck, and I'm looking at the second half of it. So prerequisites. This talks about your qualification and experience, and important part to look at it is this experience that is demanded by PMI for you to be eligible for a PGMP certification. So unlike a lot of other certifications, in this case, the unique and the different thing is it is expected that people would have managed program and people would have some good experience of managing programs before they sit down to sign up for a PGMP certification. So that is where like I mentioned earlier, your experience summary, your past background, all of these matter. And that is where it takes a different approach. That is where it becomes a little more exclusive and difficult to go through than any other certification. So moving on, what is the actual application process? The application gets submitted online, and you have so the day you initiate formally your application, you have 90 days to complete the application and submit it. Like I said, my experience says, from all the people I have guided, coached, or my own experience, you would need at least 3 to 4 iterations before you get to a point where you can say your application is complete and ready for submission. It doesn't happen at one shot, and I personally do not ever recommend doing it before at least 2 to 3 reviews of your application. So from the application, so that's what it takes. From the application submission, there are about 10 days for PMI to assess and review whether your application is complete in all aspects and respects. And if it does, they actually accept the application to move it forward for a panel review. And like I said, many a times they would come back and as part of the panel review process or otherwise, they may come back and ask you for submitting supporting evidence, which adds 90 days to this process from the day you receive the request for supporting for sending supporting evidences. Once all of that is done, dusted, you get into real formal final review of your application, which is supposed to take up to 4 weeks. And at the end of it all, they would give you a confirmation or otherwise, which allows you and makes you eligible to go through a certification test. And you have 1 year from the time of your application submission to go through your certification test. Few quick key points which I've somewhat covered earlier as well. Do make it a point to highlight and capture experience in your application as close to reality as possible. Like I said, don't try to fudge or don't try to oversell yourself. It's important to be able to define your experience should you run into an audit process. And second and more important, I always typically recommend people to have some semblance and some knowledge of what PGMP course and outline is all about when they submit their application. What ends up happening is that what ends up happening, like I said, is if you submit your experiences, and some of it will cover in this webinar as well, and if you are not making good sense of the program management experience, you are setting yourself up for failure. So try not to do that. And last but not the least, in case you have it handy, in case it is possible, feasible, don't hesitate to reach out to somebody who might have already gone through the process and can potentially add some value to your overall experience summary and application process. So this is more about the administration part of it, application submission and acceptance. Let's move on. The actual examination process, like I said, once application is accepted formally by PMI, you get notified and become eligible to go through a test. This test, as is the norm, is a multiple choice question test, 4 hours duration, altogether 170 questions. And what is required is, and we'll come back to that in the subsequent slide, but typically the breakup of 170 is there would be 20 odd questions which are more like trial questions, which are not used for your scoring. These are, like the text says, these are the questions which are typically fed in by PMI for the purpose of building them up for future question bank. But rest of the 150 are pretty much all that you need to, that are used for scoring. However, interesting bit here is you are not made aware, or you never know which are those 20 questions out of 170 which will not be considered for your scoring. So from your perspective, you need to take all 170 with equal seriousness and hope that whatever you get wrong belong to those 20 which you were not, which were not being considered for your scoring. Moving on, a quick snapshot of various areas and domains that get covered in the overall program management certification as well as examination. So just to give you a quick sense, there are 5 domains here that are typical of PGMP curriculum. Each of these domains have their subsequent tasks which are supposed to get performed, and alongside in the table you can also see the corresponding weightages for each of these areas. So as you can sense, program life cycle, which is the heart of the matter, is going to take the bulk of it. And but it is if you look through all 10 odd areas, you can't afford to be light or go easy on any one of them. You need to be able to understand, apprehend, and apply all of them equally well for you to be in a good shape for clearing the certification test. Moving on, so what does it take? When do you know we have qualified? So essentially, what PMI demands is you have moderately proficiency level in all to be able to clear the test. Now there are some permutation combinations here which make life a little difficult. I typically recommend to people not to get swayed by those complications and actually look to spend equal time and energy on all of them to be able to safely play out the test. And one quick thing, in case you are not already aware, PMI doesn't require or demand you to be a PMP to go for a PGMP certification. So I, for example, for one, did not do PMP uh, and went straight into PGMP certification myself and came out in one shot. But I do know a lot of people who look to take it as a stepping stone, as in PMP as a stepping stone to be able to get to the PGMP, but officially speaking, not required. Although what I can tell you is while preparing for PGMP, I did spend equal amount of time refreshing myself on PMP concepts as well. So just for you to bear in mind. And last point on this topic, you can very well get to all these details in the PGMP handbook as well, which you can get to PMI site. Moving on, so just a quick rider. So what are we there for and what can we help you with? Of course, needless to say, this webinar itself, I consider to be part of the preparation. We can very well offer guidance through these webinars, recordings, and otherwise, get you bootstrapped with respect to your preparation. What does it take? How to prepare? What best to go through? How best to go through it? And then, of course, we also do offer reference material, training material, as well as in-person classroom trainings that you can choose to join. And perspective is, like I said, it just gives you a head start, a strong head start, and be able to also answer questions or get answers to questions that come to your mind as you go through the preparation itself. Moving on, now we jump right into what program management framework is all about, and this is largely based on the standard for program management published by PMI. I have used both version 2 and version 3 in my life while giving out webinars, trainings, overviews, and a lot of it is my own experience as well. And there are supplementary books as well which are available in the market. A few of them actually do complement your preparation very well. So that is what. So this is a crux, so to say, of all of that learning and experience that I went through. So coming back to it, this puts a program in perspective with respect to an organization. So as you can see from the top, typically in any organization there would be a portfolio of things to be done, portfolio of initiatives. You would have typically multiple projects, multiple programs within that portfolio, and there would be some ongoing operations as well. So one of the key things at the very beginning of program management curriculum that you need to be clear and aware about is what is the distinction between them. So what is a program versus a project, what is ongoing versus ongoing operations, and what can be encompassed in a program itself. So a program can have projects, can have operations, can have any combination or quantity of these, and that's how it is very very lively understood. Now the other piece, if you look at the left half or the left corner of the screen, is there is some information which flows down from top to bottom. So portfolio would feed into program and program would feed into its components. And as program progresses through its life cycle, the information goes up in the bottom up manner from projects and activities up to programs to beyond program into the organization portfolio. So just bear this overall perspective in mind. Let's move on. So why is a program important in the portfolio, right? The very fundamental question. So we know there are programs and projects, but essentially what happens is, and we'll talk more about it over the next 10, 15 minutes or so. What you would realize is the programs are very critical components for organization to fulfill their goals and objectives. Essentially, what happens is, organization would have some objectives defined, which then need to be converted into a strategy, which then feeds into what can be potential projects and programs on the ground to help feed into that. Now, let me give a quick example. trying to keep it simple. So let's say there is a real estate construction organization or a company which is looking to establish itself in a new city in the country, right? They are currently operating in 5 cities in southern part of the country, and they want to go out and start creating a market in the northern part of the country itself. Now that itself would tell you that this is what they what their vision and mission is, and let's say they want to over a period of 5 years get 20% of their revenue coming in from northern part of the country, and in that respect they want to be able to establish their name and be able to get visible in the northern part of the country. This in turn would need to be broken down further into, so there would be multiple elements. Okay, let me take a quick pause. So I have a question here from Rajesh about the fees and stuff. So Rajesh, just wanted to let you know, I'll come back to address it. We'll definitely cover it. For now, let me just keep moving. So yeah, sorry about this. Coming back to it. So coming back to the example, this real estate construction company. So let's say they want to construct a commercial come residential complex in a city in the northern part of the country. That can help them get initiated and get them started off. So as you can imagine, goal becomes 20% of revenue in 5 years from northern part of the country. One means of accomplishing that would be creating and building this residential come commercial complex, and that is what would be typically looked as a program which is going to feed into this. Their strategy might be that they are going to create 5 or 7 of such complexes. They are going to be heavily promoting themselves. They are going to tie up with some of the marquee industries in the northern part. So all of this is going to eventually get accomplished by the fact that a program needs to be initiated to create a residential come commercial complex in northern part of the country in a city which they identify and choose. So let's keep that example in mind. We'll probably use it as we move along. Moving on, so what is essentially program management, right? Program management, as you see here, is the essence of it is there are going to be multiple streams, multiple activities. Program management is all about doing a centralized, coordinated management to help the overall program move forward by ensuring that all the multiple streams underneath are getting done in an effective manner. Those multiple streams, like I mentioned earlier, could themselves be multiple projects. So a program looks at how these various projects are aligning with each other, how are they getting optimized with respect to their execution, how are they getting optimized with respect to their completion, and there are expected to be dependencies in terms of cost, schedule, effort, resources, and so on and so forth. So program management essentially is amalgamation of all the projects that are going to get managed, plus things beyond those individual projects which are going to be looked after by program management and the structure supporting it. Moving on, apologize. So moving on, what is the role of program manager? As you would have figured out by now, a program manager is the in charge and owner of the program, and in turn would be supported by multiple role responsibilities. So there would be project managers, there would be program management office, there would be infrastructure, there would be program steering committee, and a whole lot of factors which come into the picture. But the glue that holds all of it together and moves it forward is a program manager. And by virtue of the fact that program manager is actually dealing with a lot of these different actors and playing at a bigger scale compared to a project, the demand on the skill, communication abilities goes up disproportionately. Some of them, fairly simple and obvious are listed here. So, like I said, be able to see the big picture and convert that into something more meaningful. strategic visioning, in short, effective communication, relationship management, and so on and so forth. And last but not the least, fair bit of project management experience as well, because project management experience is going to be very, very handy when a program manager is looking to assess and move and evaluate the projects with respect to their setup and completion. I hope this is making sense. And if not, like I said, jot down your questions. We discuss as much as time permits. For now, moving on. So here is what a typical program life cycle would look like. And one key important aspect that you need to bear in mind and be clear about is benefits. So very short and sweet, a program is supposed to result in some benefits as against a project which is supposed to result in a deliverable or a service or a offering. The concept of program is it is going to generate multiple such deliverables, and from organization objective there has to be end benefit which organization has to reap, not just a deliverable or a service or a product or a output, which would be the typical case of a project. So what this picture tells you is that while a program is going through its life cycle, definition, benefits, delivery, and closure, there is a parallel life cycle which has to be managed in terms of benefits, starting with what would be the benefits which program should look to deliver, detailing them out, and then going through execution to get them get realized. And last and important, bottom right corner of the screen, a transition of these benefits to ongoing operations, so that organization can look to reap these benefits beyond the life of a program itself. In this specific activities with respect to programs, as they are called phases: formulation, preparation, execution, and closure. And then there is controlling, which takes pretty much runs throughout the program. And then on the left hand, you see stakeholder management. Basically, the intent here is stakeholder management is going to feed into all of these parallel tracks or parallel streams. And at the bottom, you see program governance, which has to run pretty much all throughout, right from the program beginning itself. So at one shot, you get a sense of how program, its various phases, its life cycle and benefits interplay, in addition to whatever supporting infrastructure you see. So typical infrastructure for a program would be the program management team. It is again referred by a short acronym of PMO itself. And then program governance, which includes steering committee, executive sponsor, project managers, user groups, various influencers, detractors, all of those are what typically get covered in the stakeholder management, and the ongoing the transition into ongoing benefits. Moving on, so that is that was a very brief and impactful overview of program management framework. Like I said, intention here is to get you oriented, exposed to the various concepts and verbiage. And I do sincerely hope that as you go back and start reading up more about it, you would be able to make more sense out of things than would have been the case otherwise. So moving on, in terms of coming back to certification itself, I'm sure a lot of people would be wondering, how to go about preparing and getting ready for the certification. So we know application process, certification test itself, but what does it take to get ready and get to that stage? So here is a quick cheat sheet, as I call it. Okay, I'm getting a lot of questions. Good to see that. We'll talk about it, in a short while. And I can see a lot of interesting questions. So really appreciate that. Keep them flowing in. We'll cover these in a few minutes. So coming back to the application process itself, the preparation process itself. Here is what I've typically followed and recommended to everybody. do budget for good 12 to 18 weeks, starting from totally cold, for you to be comfortably placed to take up the test, right? And depending on how much oriented you already are, how much work has already gone in, you might be in a further ahead down the path. But typically from end to end, starting from scratch, I would imagine it would take this much time for everybody to go through all the necessary rigorous preparation, which involves, like I mentioned earlier, going through standard for program management itself multiple times. Now, interesting and the wonderful thing here is, so when I took up my PGMP, I was going through and referring to version V2, but now there is a V3 out, which is much more simpler and easier to deal with, easier to comprehend. But I also feel that V3 itself may not be enough for you to cover all the concepts and activities and areas that you need to cover. So do supplement it with other books, or maybe try to look up V2 itself. And very critical point in all of this is go through loads and loads of questions, because one thing I can tell you is, no matter how much reading up you do, by very nature of the fact that program management and program manager is all about dealing with a lot of uncertainties, you can never be sure that you have covered the entire curriculum. I, for one, never tell anybody that this is all there is to program management. There would always be things which would come up. So do broaden your experience by going through loads and loads of questions. And other piece which it does well is, it also gives you a good sense of how ready are you with respect to the question, with respect to the certification test itself. As you get, or as you are supposed to get closer to the examination date, you would yourself feel a lot more confident if your questions are more right than wrong. And then, leading up to the actual examination date, certification date, again, by then, in the last 2 to 4 weeks prior to the test, you should be very clear about areas that you seem to be holding up well on, versus areas where you need to probably spend more time and effort. And that is what also comes through from your questionnaires and question practice. And you go back to the reference material, go back to the reading material, so it kind of acts as a closed loop. You identify areas from your question bank where you seem to be still fumbling, go back to the material, reference, read up more, research more, and then come back. And of course, not the least, on the examination day, if you have gone through this loop enough times, you would feel fairly comfortable and confident going through. The perspective is, while you are going through all the reference material and question banks, try not to memorize, because there would hardly be any questions which would test your knowledge of concepts itself. A lot of it would be a scenario based, where you would be given a practical scenario and you would be asked to choose the best approach for the response. And that is where it is more important and critical to be aware of the concepts rather than having to memorize them. Moving on, so a couple of quick questions. Now let me do this. Before we jump into these couple of questions, let me come back to the questions which I have received so far. So I'll start going through them one by one. So starting with the question which has been asked about the application fee and possible refund. So yes, before you submit your application, you need to pay up the entire fee. And what PMI says is that in case your application gets rejected, you are eligible to get some refund. Offhand, I don't remember what that percentage of refund is, but I think, to the best of my knowledge, you end up losing something like 40 to 50%, and rest of it is what you actually get back in case the application is not accepted. More detail, more information, friends, you can get from PMI side. I'm sure this is not a, this can potentially keep changing from time to time. So just keep an eye out, and when you are ready to submit application, just check. However, on a personal note, I wouldn't worry so much about the refund. While it is good to know, good to be aware, I would rather have you worry more about how ready can you be with the application so that you don't have to come back to that refund stage. Moving on, other question: how can we map program manager role in the Scrum teams? It's a very interesting area and relatively still unexplored. To be honest, here is my personal take. So program manager, you could loosely think of him running a Scrum of Scrums, right? If you are familiar with the Agile verbiage and approach, he could actually very well be running a Scrum of Scrums. As you saw, there could be multiple projects and streams underneath a program, and depending on the time duration, depending on criticality, depending on stage of the program, there could be a time when Scrum of Scrums could be very handy. Other than that, I consider, typically that's one other clear distinction between a project and a program. Programs invariably compared to projects would be longer drawn, longer duration, uh, multiple streams. So I would imagine, program manager typical cases would have a difficult time going through a daily scrum of scrums or a periodic scrum of scrums. So, but that said, there is no hard and fast rule for or against it. I hope that helps. Okay, all right. Anup, question, and I was hoping somebody would throw it up. What is the difference between the role of a program and a project manager? So, like I mentioned earlier, without going into the title itself, very simply, at a program management level, you are dealing with lot more uncertainty, lot more complexity, lot more volume of work, lot more, responsibilities. You are dealing with more critical aspects of the organization. So, in short, program manager is think of it as a case of in very crude language, a program manager managing multiple projects at a time and trying to make them go in sync to result in the overall benefit that our organization wants and looks to achieve. More details, much more information is available as you read through the reference material or pick up stuff. But in short, that is the broad painted picture that I would want you to bear in mind. Okay. Next question, Biswadeep, how is program management relevant or can be utilized in IT industry? Very good and very interesting. To be honest and frank, in IT industry, we end up abusing the word program management, right? Like I said, PMI expects and demands you should have gone through fair bit of program management experience. But typically, what we end up doing in IT for program management sake is not really program management as per PMI definition. For us, anybody who has multiple projects running underneath would be a program manager, which is a misnomer for PMI. Unless those projects are so, let me add further. Even if projects are running for the same customer uh, or same geography or same LOB, same vertical, same horizontal, they don't really lend themselves together to be called as a program. The very simple definition is a lot of these projects have to be interlinked heavily and be able to lead up to common benefits for them to be called as a program or for them to be collectively called as a program. And so I had example of running a few programs myself, even though I had not gone through the certification. But on hindsight, that is what would be a typical common thread. So interlinked, leading to common benefits, and what you are looking to do as a program manager is manage those interdependencies for various projects. And mind you, coming back to it, you are not managing a project on behalf of a project manager. So there are project managers doing their job. What you're doing is managing projects through the project managers to make sure overall program moves forward. Okay, other interesting bit, please elaborate on measured aggression. So here is what I can offer. It is so Sunil. Basically, what happens is while you're dealing with so many different entities, there would be times when things will not go as per plan. Things will not be looking to, aid the forward movement of your program, and that is where you got to be very careful of not falling prey to those excuses which come up, and at the same time be firm and be assertive in letting everybody around know that things have to move forward. That is what I mean by measured aggression. You can't be thrown around as a program manager, and at the same time you need to lend your weight to the overall assessment and review and planning that you do. So that's what I broadly refer to it as. Uh, in short, you cannot be a very people-friendly person for you to go through a program management successfully. There would be a time when you would need to be task-oriented, and there would be times when you would want to go back to people orientation. So that mix is what I broadly think about when I talk about measured aggression. Okay, next question, Govind Raj, cost of certification. Friend, I suggest we can refer to the PMI site. I don't have the number handy, but I think depending on whether you are a member or not, so it would be somewhere around $1,500 to the best of my memory. I may not be, I haven't gone back to look at it recently, but if required, we can check it up on PMI site, or you could, we could publish that information. So, Sakshi, I hope I did answer the question about measured aggression. When there could be a time when a project manager is, potentially giving you all reasons on why a project is not moving forward, and this could be lack of manpower, or people not being able to complete their activities on time, and so on and so forth. What you as a program manager want to bear in mind is that all of these things are pretty much what are the direct responsibilities of a project manager, and one important job for a project manager is to de-risk the project with respect to any dependency. So that is where you need to not get sucked into this these arguments, and we firmly assertively go across with a message that nothing doing, project has to move forward, and you as a program manager don't give the liberty and luxury for anybody to take it otherwise. Okay, coming back to the next question from the queue, is it recognized across the globe? So like I said, at this point, the majority of population which is certified is from USA. PMI, being a USA body, is very well known, respected, reputed in USA by virtue of the fact that countries like India, China, Mexico, Latin America, APAC, they do have a lot of interface with US markets. So in all of these markets, it does get recognized very easily. Europe, as you would probably know, there is a parallel body which runs PRINCE and MSP certifications. So UK specifically, I think those might be a little better known. But that said, I've never gone wrong by recommending to somebody to take up PGMP. Like I said, one part is what you get with the certification, the other part is what you can do with the knowledge. So that doesn't go wrong anywhere in the globe. Okay. Uh, Rajashri Arjun, yes, like I said, as V3 is at a very high level. I personally uh, recommend to people to start off with reading V3, but not get restricted to it. In the ideal world, I would want you to go back and refer to V2 as well, although it does get fairly complicated at times, but nevertheless, it adds value. And you should definitely look to take up some supplementary reading as well. There are a lot of books available on the market. You could go to Amazon and do a search, pick up a few which you feel are available, or you could walk into a bookstore. Reason I'm not recommending any names is it all depends on your personal liking. I, for one, am not a big fan of very complicated and tedious books. I like which are easy flow, easy reads, which explain the concept well, and I make that sense by looking at them for 10-15 minutes in a bookshop before I decide to buy. And yes, so V3 for that matter, V2, you will find it doesn't answer all the questions. If there are inconsistencies although from V2 to V3 there has been a dramatic improvement in that, but nevertheless be ready and be mentally prepared for a lot of unanswered questions, which is where I said don't imagine that a BGMP curriculum or SPM would give you all that is there to know about BGMP. You should look at supplementing with a lot of other information as well. Okay, Anup, your question, validity of PGMP. So like PMP, it runs for 3 years. Once you have taken it, you have it valid for 3 years, and then you need to earn PDUs, 60 PDUs in parallel, and you can make it a parallel exercise. You can earn PDUs for both PMP and PGMP together. And at the end of 3 year period, if you have done enough on PDU earning, you are allowed to go ahead and do a renewal by just paying a fee without having to go through the application certification process again. Okay, building up more, so inconsistency in P3 I agree and understand, like I said, there are inconsistencies there are different things, but as you use it as an initial read, set the base and go forward. Don't get stuck with it only. How much preparation is required, Vinay? So I think we hopefully covered that adequately. I typically recommend at least 3 to 4 weeks of SPM over this duration. I recommend at least going through 1,000+ questions with all honesty and take up 1 or 2 supplementary reads. Depending on how comfortable you are, you could choose to go through it faster or slower. Uh, Compared to PMP, I would say it does, having a PMP would definitely help, but it doesn't make life much easier. So having a PMP would make you feel comfortable with some of the verbiage that gets talked about, but not necessarily shorten or cut down your preparation process. It just makes life a little easier when you go through PGMP stuff. Okay, once the application is approved, I think what you have is you have 1 year window to take up the test. That's the short answer. How different is this from management of portfolios? So my understanding, portfolio management of portfolios or PFMP is the next higher elevated step from PGMP. So like we looked at the basic hierarchy, a portfolio would feed into multiple projects. So at the portfolio level, you are dealing with potentially multiple programs, projects, and operations blended together. Okay, team. I guess good. I guess all the questions that I had received have been answered. Now let me just quickly use last 7-8 minutes to run through quick couple of questions. The idea of these questions was just to give you a sense of what to expect. So I'm coming back to the slide deck, hopefully open in front of you. So, I'll let you read through, or you may have already read through, but briefly, let's say there is a government agency which is looking to come out with new regulations for packaged food. And this is driven by the fact that there have been in recent lab tests, packaged food has been found to be contaminated, had to be withdrawn from the market, penalties imposed, and so on and so forth. And for these new regulatory requirements, you have been appointed as a program manager. And there are a lot of people within that organization or otherwise are raising a voice as to why is it being dealt with differently compared to past? Why is this being set up as a program? So look at the options 1 to 4, and I would wait for any of you to respond back with the potential answers that you can think of. And in the meanwhile, I'll take just one last question. So what's the fee for a classroom training? I think Sandeep, that's what you asked. So Sandeep, watch out for it. As and when we publish a potential classroom training, we'll also indicate what kind of fee comes along with it. Different people, different courses have their own fee structure. What I typically recommend to people is And what I personally like to do is a 3-2 course, 3-2 classroom training course, which which works well considering the base and the concept that need to be covered. So that's what we typically do. But there are times when, for a variety of reasons, it gets cut down to 2 days as well. But anything less, I don't believe makes a lot of sense. So if you do look to sign up for one, ideally go for a 3-day course, but nevertheless, no less than 2-day course at the very least. Okay, coming back to the question itself, Dean. So how you would potentially explain. So Sandeep, like I said, as we publish the calendar, we do cover pretty much all the cities from time to time. So watch out for our notification, and if there is one coming up in Hyderabad, you will get to know about it. So yeah, coming back to it, as a program manager, uh, are you going to say, or are you going to offer that because there are multiple projects which are going to be run here with numerous interdependencies, hence you are believing it to be an appropriate program, or the fact that projects are going to be supporting shared clients, so there could be multiple food companies and who could be offering multiple food products, packaged food products. So if there are such companies who are going to consume multiple of these regulations, will that qualify to be a program? Or third option, your objective is to minimize change. And fourth is you are looking to manage common resources. Now, offhand, I can tell you that there is nothing wrong with options D and A. Option B, like I mentioned earlier, in the context of IT industry, doesn't lend itself to a definition of a program. And option C, I think again, going back to what I mentioned earlier, long-run project programs, multiple projects, there is no way you can afford to be close to accepting changes. So, there is a low chance of you being a successful program manager, sorry, by trying to minimize change. Now, between A and D, yes, you do and can end up managing common resources as well. But the bigger and the higher motive is for you to handle all the interdependencies. The interdependencies could come from common resources, common outcomes, common inputs, and so on and so forth. Or there could be dependencies from one project output to another as well. So that is what is a typical scenario for a program manager. So in this case, from my perspective, option A is the right answer. I hope that made sense. Moving on, now this is the next question. Again, I would give a quick, 15 seconds to read through. There is this company which is running international hotels, and they are now looking to venture into cleaning business, right? Home cleaning specifically, housekeeping, uh, and all sorts of cleaning and repairs. Because from their perspective, they already do it for their own properties, and as a result of this, they are creating four major programs which are going to result in various interrelated projects. You know, so this four programs could be depending on what kind of specific activity they are targeting, what kind of geography, territory, what shape and form they want to start off with it in. So a whole lot of scenarios. The question is, there is a program office which is put in place. Now, what in your opinion would be the best responsibility function of the program office? So option A, would you consider it to be executive owner of the program? Option B, like you would imagine in the context of project management, you think it provides administrative support, or C, it is an external regulatory authority which is going to support you with respect to policy and perspective, and D is it is responsible for achieving program goals. I'll take a pause in case. Yes, so again, to give you a sense, you would pretty much imagine a lot of these answers would be, applicable. But in this case, the answer from my perspective is B. And let me clarify why. Uh, Program Management Office is not the owner of the program. It would typically be the executive sponsor who is going to, in short, write the check for funding and going to act as a support for clearing roadblocks. It does provide administrative support to program managers and program management team. So there could be more than one project manager, like we said. It could very well act as a regulatory authority in case there are policies, templates, procedures to be created uh, as part of the program. But that is not the primary responsibility. It is responsible for achieving program goals by supporting risks and issues. But in that capacity, the bigger responsibility lies with the program manager. And you know, program management office, like I said, is going to be a heavy support task, almost like a right hand. But it doesn't itself would be the ultimate answering authority uh, in case there are things which go wrong. So that could be program manager. So considering all the aspects, B is the right answer here. So I hope these couple of questions gave you some sense of what to expect. And like I said, it should also emphasize why going through questions is critical. Because like I said, none of them lend themselves to a direct and easy answer if you have gone through your study material or reference material. Now, just last one bit and another quick couple of minutes. I'll leave behind one scenario for you to munch on, think about, or try to practice with. So let's say there is this organization which is looking to shift their office because they have grown and they are not going to be able to comfortably handle all their services and activities from the current office. And at this point, let's say sitting in second week of September, it looks like their new office would be ready for occupation by December. However, in parallel, there is also a conference which they need to organize, which is going to be a conference hosting people from various countries, almost 500 plus people who are going to have to come down. And that has its own life cycle, although date is looking to get finalized as the things move forward. Now, what you could look to do is identify all the major activities which would be required for both of these. And remember, to make your life easier, it is the same team which is going to be doing both. So you need to bear that in mind and factor that in. And what you should look to do is, from your own perspective, define what would be a project in this scenario, what would be a program, and what would be a portfolio, right? So again, from my perspective, this is not something which is going to lend itself to a right or a wrong answer. The idea and intention here is more for you to think through and understand how it plays out. Overall, you could keep coming back to question like this or others which you find along the way to apply your learning and go through your own checks of how ready you are and how close you are to the final test. So that's where things are, friends. I guess we are almost, or not almost, we are out of time as well. I hope this was worthwhile. This was meaningful. And like I said, there would be a recording coming your way. And what you can expect is, you can expect a mail coming back from the email ID, which would go something like trainings@eduvator.com. Don't miss looking up your spam folder over next couple of weeks in case it ends up there. And also, needless to add that this is all being organized under the aegis of Eduvator. So do expect this recording and a link to reach you. And I do hope it was meaningful, wonderful, and would love to go forward and look for more opportunities. In case you do run into any questions, you can reach me personally at this point as well, or reach out to or respond to the email ID that you get the mail from. We'll do our best to respond back and help you out with whatever queries, questions you have. Right. Thank you guys. Thank you all. Appreciate your support and look forward to supporting you on this journey forward for PGMP. Bye for now, and we are going to sign out. And you all have rest of the day ahead of you. Have a great day. Take care.